crash and the stranger the stars looked calm, like silent sentinels watching over empty space. As Lieutenant Eli Rayner coasted through the edge of Sector 17 in the Marlin's Pulse, a human freighter older than him and held together more by faith than steel, he leaned back in the pilot's seat, boots propped on the dashboard, eyes half-lidded as the navigation screen flickered with static. Boring. This was supposed to be a milk, Runa low-priority delivery route for terraforming, components and thermal fuel, in and out without a whisper. A mission so uneventful it didn't even warrant a co-pilot. Then the hull shuddered. Eli's eyes snapped open, a warning tone howled through the cockpit, followed by the AI's glitchy voice. Magnetic anomaly detected. Hull integrity compromised. Before Eli could react, the ship bucked violently to the left. Lights exploded across the console. He grabbed the yoke instinctively, trying to level out, but something had latched onto the shipper mine. A rogue gravity hook. The AI sputtered. Emergency protocol. Offline. Sparks showered from the panels. The freighter spun, tumbling end over end through a silent asteroid field that hadn't been there on the map. A glowing moon appeared below, swelling fast in the view. Its surface shimmered with strange blue crystal forests and deep canyons lined like open wounds across the surface. Eli's heart pounded. He slammed the emergency descent lever and screamed through his teeth. Come on, old girl, don't quit. On me now. The planet didn't wait. The Marlin's Pulse hit atmosphere hard, tearing through clouds of glittering dust. The ship cracked sideways, then plunged. The scream of metal on rock echoed through the ship's frame. Gravity did the rest. The ground rose fast. Everything went black. When Eli woke, it was to a bitter silence broken only by the soft crackle of dying electronics. Blood trickled down the side of his face, dripping from a gash above his eyebrow. One arm throbbed, likely fractured. The cockpit canopy was shattered, letting in the pale light of the alien moon. He coughed and groaned, shifting in his seat, trying to remember how many bones he had and if any of them were still intact. Outside, the world glowed a faint violet. Crystal spires stood like silent guards, stretching toward a sky painted with two pale moons. There was no wind, no birds, no sound, just the quiet hum of a place untouched by time. He dragged himself from the wreck, boots crunching on broken glass. Smoke curled from the engine housing. The internal systems were fried. Life support was failing. Radios were dead. He didn't need diagnostics to know he was well and truly stranded. He tried the emergency beacon. Nothing. The crystal formations around the ship pulsed faintly. A field of interference so dense it might as well be lead. Eli wrapped himself in a frayed thermal blanket and huddled beside the cracked hull. He rationed heat, breath, and fear. By nightfall, the cold was unbearable. His fingers went numb, his vision blurred. It would be a quiet death, he thought. Not a bad one, just lonely. Then he heard it, a sound, not wind, not metal settling. Footsteps. He pushed himself upright, grabbing a piece of sharp pipe from the wreckage. His breath came in clouds. He stepped out of the broken ship, eyes scanning the crystal valley. A figure stood just beyond the light. She was tall, graceful, and glowing faintly under the twin moons. Her skin had the softness of polished stone, smooth and tinted with a gentle lavender hue. Lines of blue light coursed across her arms and neck like living circuits. Her eyes, large and silver, shimmered without expression. She said nothing, moved not a muscle. Eli held his makeshift weapon tight. I don't want trouble, he said, voice hoarse. Still, no response. Then, slowly, she walked forward, not toward him, but toward the ship. Her feet barely made a sound on the ground. She moved like she belonged here, like the crystals parted for her. When she reached the engine panel, her long fingers traced the broken edge. Without glancing at Eli, she slid one of her gloves off and touched the exposed conduit. The ship lit up. Eli stepped back. He watched, stunned, as the console flickered. A low hum rose from the engine. Lights returned, faint and sputtering. She was repairing it, no merging with it. Her glowing fingers moved faster now, finding pathways, bridging wires. Then, without hesitation, she began to remove the rest of her suit. Eli's face turned red. Hey, wait, what are you doing? She didn't look at him. She wasn't removing the suit like a person disrobing. It was like peeling away a barrier. Beneath the armor, her body pulsed with light like a living power source. Blue circuit-like veins crisscrossed her chest and back. From her spine, thin fiber-optic strands extended and connected to the engine housing. The ship roared louder. Power surged through the systems, but it was hurting her. Eli saw her legs tremble, saw the color drain from her face, the glow of her body flickering like a dying flame. Her breath grew shallow. Her knees buckled. "Stop," Eli shouted, running to her. "You're going to burn out." But it was too late. Her connection overloaded. Sparks burst from the panel. She screamed, short, sharp, and utterly alien, then collapsed. He caught her before she hit the floor. She was blazing hot, her body trembling in his arms. Her skin flickered dimly. He laid her down on a cargo tarp inside the ship, covering her in the last blanket he had. She stirred weakly, whispering something that wasn't a word, just a feeling, a pulse, a presence. Trust. Eli stared down at her as the engine faded to silence. The ship was still broken. He was still stranded, but now, he wasn't alone. The light between them. By the time the second night fell, the ship had gone quiet again. Its brief resurrection faded into flickers and dying sparks. Eli sat beside the glowing girl, wrapped in his only clean blanket, a Hoffiton ration bar in his lap, trying not to stare, but it was hard not to. Her skin, though dimmed, still glowed faintly in the dark like soft moonlight trapped beneath glass. Thin lines of blue light pulsed through her arms and across her collarbone, fading every few seconds. The shimmer had slowed since she collapsed, and her breathing was shallow but steady. Eli didn't know if that was normal for her kind. He didn't even know what her kind was. He had seen dozens of species before in the colonies and ports, some silicon-based, some amphibious, some too strange to even describe, but none like her, none who merged with tech as if it were part of their body, none who bled light instead of blood. He sat with his back against the metal wall, shivering quietly as cold seeped through his boots. The emergency heater barely worked. He glanced over at her again and found himself whispering, "Who are you?" No response, but she stirred. Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket. Her eyes fluttered open silver, unfocused at first. Then she turned her head toward him. Eli leaned closer. "Hey, you're awake. That's good. You nearly fried yourself back there." She blinked slowly, then sat up with deliberate calm. Her movements were graceful, not mechanical, but precise, like every action was chosen before it happened. She didn't speak, just looked around the dim, cracked interior of the wreck. Then she pointed toward the engine compartment with one glowing hand. "You want to try fixing it again?" Eli asked. She nodded once, small and sharp, then pushed herself off the seat. Her legs wobbled at first, and Eli jumped to support her, but she waved him off gently. Instead of heading directly to the engine, she knelt by a small supply locker and opened it. Eli watched silently as she pulled out a battered toolkit and laid it open. Her fingers hovered over each tool for a second before selecting one, an old human fusion splicer. She turned it over in her hands like it was unfamiliar but interesting. "You know how to use that?" Eli asked. No reply. But then she moved to the damaged conduit and began reconnecting the wires faster than he could follow. Her body still glowed, though faintly, and her touch made the metal warm again. Eli stepped beside her. "You're not from around here, are you?" Still silence. Then she turned to him, and her hand rose slowly. She touched her throat, then her chest. Then she held her palm up in the air, fingers spread. Her body pulsed, not randomly but rhythmically. A flicker of light ran down her arm, across her chest, then back again in a loop. Eli watched, puzzled. Then he realized. "You're speaking," he said, squinting at the pattern. "That's your language." She paused, then blinked twice, then once. "Yes," he guessed aloud, a short flash down her shoulder. "Confirmation." Eli grinned. "You're a walking communication array." She tilted her head, curious. Then she raised one hand again and slowly reached toward him. Eli hesitated, but didn't back away. Her fingers grazed his chest, just over his heart, and a soft pulse of light moved from her skin into his dot. It didn't hurt, it was warm, almost like a childhood memory, a campfire on cold nights, a mother's hum. A feeling that said, "You're safe. I know you mean no harm." He swallowed hard. "You're not dangerous," he whispered. She withdrew her hand, then pulsed a different pattern across her wrist, a shimmer of color more pink than blue. Eli didn't know what it meant, but he nodded anyway. He placed his hand on his chest. "Eli," she blinked once, then looked around the cockpit until her glowing fingers found a shattered display. She ran her hand across it. The screen lit up weakly, and she traced a symbol into the glass tree loops, joined in the center. Then she tapped her chest. "Karina," he read aloud. Her head dipped barely a nod. Eli exhaled. "So, you're Karina, and you just hijacked my dead ship to save both our lives. That's pretty incredible." She looked at him again, this time with something almost resembling amusement. Her lights dimmed, then brightened in a slow, gentle wave. He didn't know what it meant, but it felt like laughter. That night, they didn't speak, not with words anyway. But they communicated. Karina showed him things, how her body could interact with circuitry, how her pulses could redirect energy, and how she spoke through light patterns that carried emotion and intent. He showed her how human tools worked, how ration packs opened, and how the ship's systems were organized. He mimicked her gestures as best as he could, and she responded with flashes of recognition, correcting his movements with soft touches or glimmers of approval. At one point, as the heater finally failed, Eli shivered under his blanket. Karina saw. Without hesitation, she slid closer, gently placed her hand against his chest again, and let her warmth spread through him. He didn't move, didn't speak, just breathed slowly as her light calmed his racing heart. It was the strangest connection he'd ever had, not built on language, not built on fear, just shared silence and survival. He drifted to sleep with her, sitting cross-legged beside him, glowing faintly in the dark. And for the first time since the crash, he didn't feel alone. Sparks without words. The third morning began with a faint hum under Eli's boots. He blinked awake slowly, neck stiff from sleeping against the cold wall. The metallic scent of ozone hung in the air, and light warm, pulsing, light cast shifting patterns on the walls of the wrecked freighter. He sat up quickly and turned toward the cockpit. Karina stood before the main conduit, her back arched slightly, the wires from her body already weaving into the ship's damaged heart. But this time was different. She wasn't shaking. Her breath was steady. Her light, once chaotic, now pulsed with rhythmic grace. Her limbs moved like a symphony of purpose. The ship responded. Panels flickered, engine coils began to glow, and cooling vents exhaled soft waves of recycled air. Eli watched from the shadows, stunned. This wasn't pain anymore. This was language. He approached carefully. Karina didn't turn, but her skin brightened faintly, acknowledging his presence. He noticed her fingers tracing arcs of energy through the console, connecting wires without touching them directly. Sparks followed her gestures like obedient fireflies. "You're not just fixing it," Eli murmured. "You're speaking to it." Karina slowly turned her head. Her eyes met his steady, bright, unreadable, and then she blinked once. Then again. He didn't need translation this time. Yes, the rest of the day became something strange and beautiful. They worked together. Not perfectly. Eli wasn't built for alien technology, but somehow their mismatched worlds started to align. Karina moved like a living algorithm, fingers glowing, circuits bending at her will. Eli followed her gestures, handing tools when she signaled, reconnecting broken wires when she pointed, and patching the hole with thermal adhesive where she blinked twice. They had no shared language, but they didn't need one anymore. Her light was clear, his silence was patient. He asked no questions about her species, her world, or how she could do what she did. Not yet. But his eyes asked, and slowly hers answered. By late evening, the ship's engine core was humming, quiet and alive. Lights bathed the cockpit in soft warmth, the kind that made Eli feel human again, and she sat on the floor with one leg curled beneath her, slowly untangling a mesh of frayed wiring with glowing fingertips. He sat beside her, holding a cracked energy regulator. "I don't even know how you're still alive after yesterday," he said gently. She looked up, then, slowly, she extended one hand and touched his wrist. A glow pulsed softly along his skin. No pain, just warmth, and a memory formed in his mind. Not words, not even images, a feeling. Sacrifice was expected. Connection was rare. Bonding rarer still. Eli didn't move. He just looked into her eyes and whispered, "Why me?" Her hand glowed again. This time the light was different, gold not blue. He didn't understand what it meant, but he knew it mattered. Karina pulled back and reached into the toolkit beside her. She produced a small, shattered panel of glass and tapped it gently. Symbols appeared, drawn in, energy curved, looping lines that danced across the broken surface. Then she placed her finger on one of the symbols and tapped her chest. She drew a new one, slower this time, and pointed at him. Her lips didn't move, but her eyes did. Eli. She had learned his name. He reached out and placed his palm on the display, beside the symbols she'd written for him. Then, with a trembling finger, he traced another next to it. It meant nothing to him. But when he finished, she touched it, then nodded. Karina. She blinked slowly. A full pause, a breath. Then she leaned closer and touched his chest again, right over his heart. The glowing lines from her arm wrapped gently around his wrist, not binding, just holding. And for a second, Eli forgot where he was, forgot the ship, the crash, the galaxy. It was just her. That night, the temperature dropped, and Eli gathered everything he could to keep them warm: blankets, foam panels, even the old thermal regulator from the crew bay. But Karina didn't curl up like before. She sat, upright beside him, back against the wall, watching the stars through the open viewport. Her lights dimmed and pulsed like slow breathing. When Eli offered her a ration bar, she didn't take it. Instead, she reached out and touched his hand. A single pulse passed between them. Thank you, it was so clear. He didn't need to hear it. Later, as they both drifted into silence, Eli found himself staring at the strange pattern of light on her skin. It wasn't just decoration, it wasn't random. It was a living map, a conversation, a memory. He reached out, hesitating first, then gently touched her forearm. Her light shifted under his touch, not away from him, but toward him, welcoming. He whispered, I don't understand you, not fully, but I trust you. She turned her head. No words, no glow. Just her eyes, bright, calm, and something deeper. She leaned slightly closer and pressed her forehead to his just barely. Then, for the first time, she whispered something aloud. His name, not in light, not in signals, just one quiet breath in his language. Eli, his heart stopped for a second. Then he whispered back, Karina. Her eyes closed, and she smiled. It was small, barely a curve of her lips, but it was real. And in that moment, in the wreck of a half-dead ship on an alien moon where no one knew they were alive, something unspoken passed between them. Not desperation, not survival, but something deeper, trust, and the first tiny spark of something more. Her real name was hidden in light. The fourth day began not with warmth, but with silence so deep it felt heavy in Eli's chest. The ship had power again. The engine core hummed quietly. Lights glowed across the dashboard like sleepy fireflies. But outside the viewport, the crystal fields remained motionless, alien, hauntingly still, as if something unseen had begun watching back. Eli sat in the co-pilot seat, tapping diagnostic screens with one hand while keeping the other near Karina, who sat cross-legged on the floor beside the engine panel. She hadn't spoken again, not with her voice, not since that one word, his name. She hadn't needed to. That single word had cracked something open inside him. Not a weakness, but a window. And now, every glance, every pulse of her delight, every soft hum from her breath, it all meant more. But not everything was well. The ship had power, but no propulsion. The fuel line was still severed near the rear stabilizers, and the external coolant unit vital for regulating the engine's plasma core was cracked beyond what Karina could mend. If she tried sinking again without it, the surge would overheat both the ship and her. Eli studied the warning messages blinking across the console and felt the weight settle deeper in his gut. If they attempted liftoff, the ship would burn out in seconds, and Karina, she would go with it. She stood slowly and approached him, her lights pulsing with a soft blue hue. It wasn't just light, it was tone. He was starting to understand that now blue meant calm, safe, thoughtful. He turned to her, voice low. It's not enough. We can't fly yet. She paused, then reached toward the main screen and tapped the corner gently. The display flickered, then shifted to a view of the surrounding terrain. A map formed, crafted not from data logs, but from Karina's memory. Her light flared briefly, into the control port, scanning the land beyond their crash zone. There, just on the edge of the displayed map, was a black silhouette nestled in a canyon. An old outpost. Eli leaned forward, heart beating faster. That's a structure. Human. Karina didn't answer with words. Her fingers pulsed yellow caution, then red danger. He frowned. What's there? She blinked twice, then created a pattern across the console, small spirals followed by a broken line and a slash. He didn't recognize it, but the tone in her eyes had shifted. Whatever was in that outpost, she feared it. Not for herself, but for him. Eli stood, pushing his seat back. If that's our only chance for coolant parts, I'm going. Karina raised her hand sharply, almost stopping him. A sharp orange flickered down her arm. Her expression tightened. She didn't want him to go. Then come with me, he said. She shook her head. There was something she wasn't telling him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. What's out there, Karina? You clearly know this moon. This isn't a random place, is it? Her glow faded slowly, her shoulders lowered, and then she turned her back to him. That silence hurt more than he expected, but just as he was about to move away, she lifted her arm and traced something into the condensation on the cold metal wall. 3 shapes, a symbol one he'd seen in galactic briefings. His breath caught. That's the mark of the Thaleri sovereignty. Karina didn't turn. Her light shimmered violet. Grief. She was one of them. No. Worse. She was one of the fugitives. The Thaleri weren't like most interstellar governments. They didn't forgive mistakes. They didn't allow defection. If you broke their path, their order, your name was erased. You became a void, a ghost. Eli's voice softened. You didn't crash here by accident, did you? She finally looked back at him. Her silver eyes were wet not with tears, but with the glow of unshed emotion. She raised a single hand and touched her chest. Her skin pulsed a pale pink. Gold. She hadn't just crashed here, she'd fled, and she had found him. He stepped forward and took her hand. You're not alone now. I don't care who they say you are. She blinked slowly, then placed her other hand gently over his dot. Body lit up soft and golden, not warning, not danger, but something sacred. It wasn't language, it was trust, deeper than anything he'd ever felt. She stepped closer and gently rested her forehead against his. Their breath warmed between them, and in that closeness, she spoke again so softly he barely heard it. My name is not Karina. He froze. She leaned back, eyes wide, glowing, ancient in ways he couldn't name. Her voice was fragile from disuse, but she forced it again. My true name is Carol Ney. The light that broke. The oath. It wasn't a name meant for human tongues, but Eli understood the meaning. You ran, he whispered. She nodded once, and then, across the ship's screen, a new warning flashed. Incoming signal. Unknown origin. Tracking initialized. Karina turned sharply toward it. Her lights flashed red, then dropped to near black. Eli stared at the data. They found us. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The signal blinked again. Thalari frequency detected. Subject, Carol Nye. Status, fugitive. Order, retrieval or elimination. Eli moved fast, trying to block the beacon, but Karina stopped him with a light pulse across his arm. She stared at him and shook her head. You need rescue, he said, but if that means they come for you. She raised a single hand, placing her fingers against his lips. Then she whispered, I will not run, not from you. Outside, the wind had changed. The crystals HUMMED. Somewhere, a ship was already en route, and this time it wasn't coming to help. When the pass landed in silence, the sky cracked open without a sound. Eli stared out the viewport as a sliver of black sliced across the lavender horizon. It wasn't a human vessel, no visible thrusters, no sonic boom. It moved like a shadow pulled by gravity, sleek, silent, purposeful. Karina stood beside him, her lights dimmed low, almost invisible against her skin. Her posture was still, but her fingers twitched with signals. Eli couldn't decipher nervous pulses running like Morse code across her forearms. He turned to her. Is it them? She nodded once. Her light flared faintly in red, then dropped again to neutral. The ship hovered for several minutes before descending, landing just beyond the jagged rise of crystal fields that encircled the crash zone. The dust barely stirred. There was no roar of engines, just presence, authority, judgment. Karina stepped back from the console and moved to the center of the ship, where her suit lay neatly folded, every piece organized as if part of a ritual. Slowly, she dressed, not in shame, not to hide, but with reverence. When she fastened the chest piece over her heartline, Eli saw the blue pulse beneath it flicker. He moved to her, gripping the side of the console. You're not going out there alone. She paused, looked over her shoulder, then gently lifted one hand toward him, flat, palm open. A signal, one he hadn't seen before. Wait, he shook his head. I'm not hiding while they come for you. Karina reached forward and touched his chest again, right over his heart. A single gold flicker passed from her fingertips into him. He didn't know what it meant, not exactly, but it warmed him and scared him at the same time. I'm with you, he said quietly. Her hand lingered. Then she blinked once, long and slow. Outside, the side ramp hissed open. Dust swirled around their boots as they stepped into the open. The crystal trees stood like frozen lightning bolts under the alien sun, humming faintly with invisible energy. The Thaliri ship loomed in the near distance, shaped like a blade turned sideways in the sky. Matte black with no markings. Then it opened. 3 figures emerged, tall, armored, expressionless beneath smooth helmets. Their bodies moved in sync, like dancers trained not to feel, only obey. The one in front was broader than the others, his steps slower but heavier. He carried no visible weapon, but the air around him pulsed with pressure, like gravity bending to his will. Karina stepped forward. Eli followed without hesitation. One of the armored soldiers raised a hand. Karina lifted hers in return. Her skin glowed not brightly, but enough to be seen. A greeting pulse, a universal signal for peaceful contact. The lead soldier answered not with light, but with a pulse of command, authority, submission demanded, not earned. Karina's glow dimmed. Eli felt it before she did, a shift in the atmosphere, the silent conversion from diplomacy to order. The soldiers weren't here to negotiate, they were here to retrieve her. The lead figure raised his arm and, from beneath his wrist, a weapon unfolded with eerie smoothness. No energy crackle, no hum, just a clean, quiet movement. A Thaliri pulse-cannon. Karina stepped in front of Eli instantly, her arms outstretched. Her body lit up in red and gold. He is my bond. Eli froze. The soldiers hesitated, just for a breath. Then the lead figure reached up and removed his helmet. Underneath was an older alien male. His skin bore the same pale lavender hue as but faded, weathered. His silver eyes held no warmth. Just calculation. You broke your path, he said, his voice deep, unhurried. Karina's lights pulsed again. A response I found more than I expected. The old Thalari's gaze drifted to Eli. You formed a bond. I chose one, Karina answered, now pulsing brighter. And he chose me. Eli stood tall beside her. She saved my life. She gave everything to keep us both alive. The elder looked at him without blinking. You do not understand what you interrupt, human. Eli didn't back down. Maybe not, but I understand loyalty. I understand sacrifice. The elder's eyes narrowed. And what will you do when she is taken? Karina stepped forward. Her light glowed gold and white. She touched her heart. Then her hand found Eli's. The signal surged between them like a silent flame. I will not go, she said, not in light but in voice. The elder hesitated. His face cracked slightly, not in anger, but in recognition. You speak, he said, surprised. Karina's voice trembled but remained clear. For him, yes. The soldiers behind him stiffened. She continued, softer now, each word trembling with weight. You erased my name. But he gave it back. The elder looked between them, then slowly raised his hand to the soldiers behind him. They lowered their weapons. Silence filled the canyon. Finally, he spoke. Then your path is no longer ours. His voice turned cold. We will not pursue you, but we will not protect you again. Karina bowed her head once. I do not need your protection. With that, the soldiers turned in unison, re-entered their ship, and within moments, it lifted from the surface, silent, swift, and final. Eli stood still, eyes wide. Did that just happen? Karina didn't answer. She turned to him slowly and placed her hand gently against his cheek. Her body glowed soft gold. Then she whispered, you are my bond. He reached up and covered her hand with his. And you're my future. Together, they stood in the shadow of the rising dust. Two souls no longer running, no longer alone. Whatever was next, it wouldn't be faced apart. And the stars above seemed to burn just a little warmer. Through the storm, together the dust hadn't even settled from the Thaleri ship's silent departure when the sky began to twist. At first, Eli thought it was an aftershock. Some interference kicked up from the departing vessel. But Karina was already looking up, her eyes narrowed, lights along her arms flickering rapidly, a warning he couldn't translate yet. But his gut understood. The air had changed. Above them, the sky wasn't just darkening, it was swirling slow, wide spirals. Like the galaxy itself had bent low to whisper something terrible. Electric veins pulsed through the clouds, threading between towers of crystal that now trembled like tuning forks. And far off, across the plains of glowing blue quartz, the land shimmered in waves. Karina turned to him and pulsed. Red. Danger. She signaled toward the ship, her hands moving quickly, patterns running up her forearms. Then she looked at him and simply whispered, storm. Eli's mind clicked. The environmental warnings he'd ignored earlier, the shattered moon records. This wasn't just a storm, it was a crystal storm, a phenomenon known only in theory. Massive electromagnetic winds that lifted razor crystalline shards into the air like knives riding a hurricane. He turned and ran. Inside the ship, he slammed the side panel shut as Karina followed close behind. The hull creaked with the first kiss of static. Sparks danced along the ceiling. The engine core hummed erratically. Can we fly? He asked, breathless. Karina dropped to the floor, arms already buried in the interface. Her back glowed, fiber strands sliding like roots into the systems. The engine lights pulsed back to life. She nodded one shot fast. Yes, her glow signaled. But the next pulse was orange. Maybe. Eli laughed in disbelief. That's good enough. The ship lifted seconds later, groaning as if waking from a coma. The stabilizers whined under the weight of the atmosphere, and the first wave of crystal debris struck the side with a deafening hiss. He gripped the controls, Karina's glow flooding the dashboard beside him. Then they flew. The sky outside turned. Violent lightning snaked between the clouds, illuminating fractured towers of spinning glass. Some shards were small snowflake-shaped and swirling harmlessly past the shields, but others were massive, jagged like blades, moving at sonic speeds. One clipped the starboard wing, A blast of sparks exploded across Eli's console. "Down," he shouted. Karina slammed both hands against her control port, her entire body arching with light. She screamed not in pain but with force. Her chest pulsed gold, then white, feeding raw energy into the ship's frame. The wing leveled. Eli looked at her. "You're burning yourself out." She looked back. No signal, no words, but her hand found his. He could feel it. "Let me." He turned forward, jaw tight. "Then hold on. I'm going to fly us through hell." They dove low. Below, canyons opened, like jagged mouths in the earth. The wind screamed, throwing crystal debris at them from every angle. Karina's light flickered as the ship twisted between formations that rose like frozen lightning. Eli ducked a flying shard that cracked the canopy. "We need altitude." Karina reached out barehanded and touched the glass. Her glow spread across it like a shield, melting the impact points, sealing the cracks in real time. Eli stared. "You're shielding us." She blinked once. "Yes." The ship tilted. A massive shard struck the rear fin, tearing metal like paper. The engine warning screamed. Port thrust failure. Eli called. Karina didn't even flinch. She pulled her glove off with her teeth, pressed her bare palm to the left console, and lit up like a solar flare. Her glow poured through the walls, into the vents, into the failing thrusters. For a moment, Eli saw her like she truly was. Not alien, not machine. A conduit, a language of life and code fused into form. The ship jerked upward faster than any system could have delivered. Eli fought the yoke, shouted against the G-force, and pulled them over the last ridge before the sky cleared like a curtain torn open. Then silence. Above them, a sea of stars spread like diamonds across velvet. The storm raged below unseen and forgotten. Only their breathing remained now, and the hum of a ship barely holding together. Eli let go of the controls, arms shaking. He turned. Karina slumped in her chair, body dimmed to pale light. "Karina." She didn't answer. He rushed to her, unfastening her safety strap, cradling her in his arms. Her skin was fever hot, lines across her body flickering like dying embers. "Stay with me. Come on, please." She stirred slightly, her hand twitching. He carried her to the back of the ship, where the makeshift rest pod still sat. He laid her down, wrapped her in the heat blanket again, and cupped her face gently. She blinked once, then again, but her light didn't rise. He took her hand and whispered, "You didn't just fly us out of that storm, you carried me through it." Her lips moved, barely, and then came a whisper. So soft, so fragile, he thought he imagined it. "You are my sky." His eyes burned. He leaned down, touched his forehead to hers, and whispered, "And you are my heart." For a moment, the ship floated between worlds held together by metal and light, and by something far deeper than technology. Not survival, not accident, but choice. The storm still roared behind them, but in here there was quiet, there was warmth, and there was love born from fire. A heart made of light. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, painting the void with silent beauty. The Marlin's Pulse, once a dying ship buried beneath crystal ruins, now drifted quietly toward the edge of the unknown, held together by two hands, two hearts, and one unspoken promise. Eli stood alone at the helm. The nav systems flickered weakly but steady. Power was holding. Life support was low, but manageable. The distress signal they'd modified had finally bounced off the moon's crystal lattice and been picked up by a human relay satellite. Rescue would come, but he wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about her. Karina lay in the back of the ship in the resting pod, still wrapped in the emergency heat blanket, still glowing but faintly now, like a candle in the wind. Her light pulsed soft and gold beneath her skin, fading and rising like tides drawn by something older than gravity. He visited her every few minutes. Each time, he took her hand. Each time, she responded with a small flicker of warmth. Not words, not even feelings, just presence. A reminder, I'm still here. And he stayed by her side until she opened her eyes again. It happened during one of the quietest moments. No alarms, no engines, just starlight and breath. He sat beside her, fingers brushing the edge of her hand when her palm lifted, barely, and pressed against his chest. The pulse of light that followed wasn't just warmth, it was clarity. She looked into his eyes, no longer blurred, no longer distant. And then she whispered, soft and broken from exhaustion, "I gave everything." "I know," Eli said, holding back the lump in his throat. "You shouldn't have had to." Her fingers curled weakly around his. It was choice. He leaned forward. "I thought I lost you," Karina smiled. It was tired, imperfect, but it was hers. "You held me," she whispered. "I didn't fall." And then, slowly, she sat up, her body trembling, but her light strengthening with each breath. He placed a hand on her back to steady her. "Are you?" he started, but she raised a finger to his lips and shook her head. Then she placed her palm flat against his chest again. This time her glow didn't flicker. It bloomed gold, warm, steady, and she whispered, "You're my forever." Eli felt something crack open in him, something buried beneath years of loss, silence, and loneliness. He didn't reply with words, he couldn't, so instead, he reached out and placed her hand against the glowing line that ran down his chest. Soft light pulsing from the temporary sync she'd implanted during the storm. It was still there, still alive, a piece of her in him, a thread of light that bound them now, not through code or tech but through will. They sat together in the cabin for what felt like hours. No talking, no alarms, no fire, just shared breath and soft pulses of color that moved between them like waves between two shores. Later, she dressed again carefully, but not in armor. The bodysuit she wore now was soft, almost ceremonial. It shimmered faint blue and purple, like the moon they had escaped. Eli turned the ship's console toward her. "There's a human outpost 6 hours from here. Our signal reached them," Karina nodded, her hand brushing the console gently. A slow, bright pulse followed. "Hope. But once we dock, I don't know what happens. I don't even know if they'll accept you," he admitted. She looked at him, then gently tapped her chest. "They will," she whispered. "If you do." He blinked. "You mean?" Her body glowed gold again, soft and sure. "Your name, your kind, doesn't matter," she said. Then she took his hand and guided it to her own chest, where her heartline pulsed beneath her skin. "I was erased," she said. "But you saw me." He smiled, brushing her fingers gently. "I didn't just see you, Karina, I found you," and then, quietly, she added, "I belong with you." Eli took a deep breath. "So do I." The rest of the journey passed like a dream. They flew in tandem, her light connected to the ship's systems, guiding it, more by feeling than code, and him beside her, learning her rhythms, trusting her instincts. Whenever turbulence hit, she steadied the ship before it even shook. Whenever a warning beeped, she had already rerouted the power. Together, they were something the galaxy hadn't seen before, a bond not forged in blood or duty, but in light. As the outpost came into view, floating in the orbit of a gas giant like a steel flower, Eli slowed the ship and turned to her. "We'll land, rest, figure things out." Karina nodded once, but then her expression shifted. She turned back to the console, hands moving with intent, rerouting power from auxiliary systems. "What are you doing?" he asked. She looked at him and smiled, giving them a message. On the outer hull of the ship, a bright glow pulsed, lines forming a symbol neither human nor Thalari, a fusion, her mark, and his dot, not fugitive, dot, not soldier, not pilot, dot, bonded. When the outpost hailed them, Eli opened comms. "Identify yourselves," came the human officer's voice. Eli glanced at Karina, then replied, "Lieutenant Eli Rayner." And Karina, there was a pause. "Karina is Thalari," Eli smiled, reaching over to take her hand as the glow spread between them again. "No, she's mine, and I'm hers." The silence on the other end was long, then, "Understood. Docking Bay 4 is open. Welcome aboard." Eli powered down the engine. Karina leaned her head gently onto his shoulder. Outside, the docking clamps began to close. Inside, two beings, one born of light, one forged in fire-held hands. The galaxy would never understand what they were, but they didn't need it to. Had found something more than survival, more than rescue. They had found a reason to stay together forever.